Now, another inspirational lady, Hope Daniels, was born into a family unable to look after her. Her mother was a prostitute, her father an alcoholic. One night in 1983, she took matters into her own hands. She went to the police station and begged to be taken into care with her siblings. To this day, Hope says that without the support of professionals in the care system, her life would have taken a very different path. Thank you so much for coming in today, Hope. And we should say that the names that we're going to talk about have all been changed for legal reasons. And in the book as well, obviously, that you've written about your childhood, that's what you've done. So we'll go back to the 70s. You grew up in Hackney, and from the word go, really, it was tough.
It was tough, but you don't kind of realise it when you're growing up in that.
It's your norm.
It's your norm, exactly. So looking back, it was tough, but it wasn't to me at the time.
So were you aware that you were very poor and that you were lacking in things? Because already when you were a kid, neighbours were giving you food, and Mondays were a very special day, for example, because it was the only day you had 2 meals.
I was aware that we didn't really have anything. I was aware that food was a major issue in our house, and I was kind of obsessed a little bit around food, about getting it and where I was going to get it from and how much I was going to get. And it was always a bit of a touch when we got fed by a neighbour. So yeah, we knew it was not what other kids were experiencing.
Why was your mum so absent? Because it comes through the book, you know, that she's not there when she should be. You're often looking after your 2 younger brothers on your own. Where was she?
Well, both my parents were alcohol dependent, so they were often out together, and they would get lost. They would lose each other. My mum would obviously go off and earn some money. Often they were arrested, and often they would just go off and they'd be sent to prison from court. So, you know, you kind of never really knew where they were, really.
So you'd come home from school sometimes and they wouldn't be there?
Yeah.
And then it was up to you to put the boys to bed and to...
Put us all to bed, yeah, feed us. We went to bed, you know, obviously really late, and we was out playing really late. I can't quite believe that we got away with it, really.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you know, we'll come to the night that you decided you'd had enough, but were social services in and out of your lives until this point?
They were. I didn't realise how much they were in and out of our lives until I got my social services files. But I remember for about 18 months, 2 years before we went into care, so 7 to 9, we definitely had a social worker.
So your mum had given up 2 children, hadn't she, before, anyway? She had 6 children altogether.
Yeah, and she'd had 2 girls adopted, yeah.
But she'd kept 4 of you at home. So, and she clearly couldn't look after you.
No, she couldn't cope, no.
And but still you were able somehow to kind of, as you say, avoid being taken into care, but actually, deep down, obviously, that's not what you wanted, because that night in 1983, tell us what led to you going to the police station.
Well, it had been progressively getting worse. My parents' addiction had got a lot deeper and a lot more chaotic. And on this particular day, my mum had been taken... Well, she'd gone to prison, and my dad had just disappeared out. And we was on our own in the house, and suddenly we just heard all this smashing at the front of the house, and there was big bricks and lumps of wood all coming through the house at the same time, and screaming and shouting outside the house. And what had happened is a load of adults had got together, really angry at my parents, and they just attacked the house, not knowing.
You don't know why they were angry with them?
No, I have no idea. I mean, on the front door, there was graffitied swear words and stuff on the front door, but they smashed every window in the front of our house.
Did they know you were in there?
I don't know. I don't know if they knew or not. You know, I just don't know. But the next morning, I knew I couldn't take it anymore, and I remember...
You were 9?
I was 9 years old, yeah, and I was crunching through the glass in my nightie, trying to sweep it up, and my dad was screaming upstairs where he just didn't know what had happened. He'd come back in the middle of the night, and he just didn't understand what had happened. So when I walked into the police station that day, I knew that I wasn't going home. I couldn't go home again.
You said, do something with us.
I remember going up to the counter, and I remember saying, "Oi, get my social worker." Like, you know, this little Cockney East End girl going up to the counter, and that's what happened. You know, they knew us. They knew us well anyway, the police. So when we walked in and when I said that, there was no hesitation. You know, we were just taken straight behind, and that was it. And
part of your motivation for writing the book, or at least part of what you want to get out, is just how good social services were in dealing with you at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that care is perfect. You know, growing up is not perfect wherever you're growing up. And there were decisions, as you'll see in the book, that frustrated me and that, you know, caused me some pain. But overall, if I hadn't been taken into care and met all of the caring, significant people in my life that were in the care system, I dread to think, you know, where I would be now.
So where did you go? Where did they put you?
I went to various children's homes. I was in a secure unit when I was 13, when life went a bit chaotic. I was then in further children's homes and in foster care. So I was moved around a lot, and that's just what happens in care. I'm not saying it's right, but that is what happens.
You encouraged, didn't you, Hope, to write the book Morag? You met through a Citizens Advice Bureau video that you were making?
Hope was actually my client, first of all, and she hired me to do a film at Citizens Advice on debt and disability. And at the end of that film, she asked me what I was doing next, and I said, oh, I'm going to finally write this book I've been thinking about doing for 10 years. And she told me her story, so I put that book on hold and helped her write this one.
Because by this point, you had kind of gone back into the system to work in a positive way. You'd actually got yourself, we were kind of jumping about here, but you'd gone through the care system and you were encouraged to be a lawyer by a lot of people, weren't you?
I was, yeah, I was. That was my plan. My plan was to go to law school, but I just wasn't emotionally ready to even consider independence in that way. So that never happened. But as you say, years later, I ended up working in prisons and with clients on probation, with housing and kind of advocacy work, which I just love.
You had your own children quite young, didn't you?
Well, I had my first daughter when I was 18 and then my son when I was 20.
And they didn't know this story, did they, really, until you wrote the book? They didn't know the depth and the detail?
No, they knew I'd been brought up in care, but they didn't know anything else, really.
What did they think? And how different, you know, their lives have been to your life?
I mean, they just say that they're really proud of me. They kind of understand a lot more now why I was, because I was really a very strict parent. And I was also quite obsessive around them, really. You know, I would do everything that I thought was right. So I would help out at the schools and I'd go on school trips and I would make sure they were dressed right and kind of all these, you know, I was really panicky around things. So they understand a lot more now.
What about your relationship with your own mum and dad? Have you ever kind of, can you forgive them? How do you deal with that? Because, you know, there must have been a lot of resentment for the way that they abandoned you, effectively.
There was resentment. When I was growing up, there was resentment. But the resentment really was more around, obviously, the sense of loss, but also the confusion. I couldn't understand why they just couldn't deal with their addiction. You know, you hear about lots of people that are getting support with addiction and they just weren't. So and when I became an adult, that resentment began to eat me up a little bit inside. And I realised that to be able to give myself an opportunity just to live my life, I had to forgive them. Because I realised it was me that was suffering, not them.
I mean, the stories in the book, I mean, anybody who reads it will not fail to be touched, and it's just incredible that you know, that this is in our lifetime that a child has been... Do you worry that there are kids today who are having the same childhood that you had, that same experience?
Absolutely, absolutely, which is why there was a programme on protecting our children that was on a few weeks ago, and, you know, that is the reality. That is the reality. Neglect is still out there, emotional abuse, and all of the other types of abuse.
Which is why I guess the social workers and care workers that you obviously have a great deal of respect for.
Massive respect.
We need to keep pumping resources towards...
We need to start celebrating as well. You know, we celebrate the police force, we celebrate the, you know, paramedics, and social work is just not seen in the same light, and I just don't get it. You know, we need to really kind of publicise and promote the work of social work, because I have no doubt that I would have either ended up running away from home at a really young age and getting into some sort of real nightmare situations, or I would have ended up on the streets myself. And, you know, neither of those happened because I was in care.
Hope, thank you so much for coming
Thank
in
you.
and telling your story so eloquently, and obviously, Morag, well done for encouraging her to get it all down, because it's an important story. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks, Gabby. Thank you.